That's okay, everybody. We have everybody online. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's we've got 6:34. 6:34. All right, so first item up, we have I'm wondering, Barbara, can we just real quickly go around the room and just do quick introductions? I think that'd be okay if we did that first.
Suffice for our roll call.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Barbara.
So I'm Barbara Glass. I'm the Public Records Officer for the NPRSA.
Christine Scott, and I'm the program manager for NPRSA.
Becky Range, I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Bothell, and I also help out with NPRSA.
James McNeil, NPRSA Board Chair and Bothell City Council member.
Barbara Anderson, Northshore Senior Center Board Member, Secretary of the Board.
Jen Snyder, Northshore Senior Center Board Member at large.
Kenny Wender, board member, Senior Center, also serving the finance team.
Bing Tang, Northshore Senior Center Board Member and President this year.
Olivia Dole, Northshore Senior Center, and then I'm the admin and communications assistant.
And Nathan Phillips, I'm the CEO at the Northshore Senior Center.
Kenmore City Council.
Arnie Alejandrino, Board Member, Northshore Senior Center.
Nora Todd, NSC Board Member and Member at Large.
Tricia Gustafson, volunteer at North Shore.
I have three other people who are online. Do you want to?
I'll pop in. My name is Sarah Arndt. I'm a representative from the city of Woodinville for the NPRSA.
Rod Dembowski, King County Council, NPRSA Board Member.
And then Robbie is Administrative Assistant to Board Member Sarah Perry.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have a quiz at the end of the meeting, so see how everybody does. Next up, we have public comment. Do we have anybody online or anybody in the room for public comment? Okay. Moving on, do we have a quorum for consent agenda? Okay. Any questions on the consent? I'll take a motion. NPRSA board
Move
member.
that we, this is Councilmember Dembowski. I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed in the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And are there any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it unanimous. Okay, we're moving on to reports. Christine,
Right.
first one.
Yep. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the capital repairs reports. So, just a reminder, refresher, some of the completed projects that we have done here. We did a water heater replacement, ionizer installation here in these buildings. We did repairs on the pedestrian bridge, flooring replacement in both of the buildings, and we did bathroom floor drain rehab here in the Senior Center building. And then we had a HVAC control upgrade in this building in progress currently. We have the HVAC and roof installation here at the Senior Center, and we have the Health and Wellness Center HVAC and roof. And then also, looking ahead, coming towards the end, rounding out this current levy, we hope to do envelope repairs, handrail replacement, and then also a crawl space investigation. So next slide, please.
Whoops,
Oops, too fast.
one too many.
Is that crawl space in this building or the other?
Health and wellness. Yes. And so on our current projects, the HVAC install here at the Senior Center is 100% complete. We are about 92% on the roof installation. And just an update on the change order that we had for the addition repair. That was completed and we came in on budget, so nothing else was found. Health and wellness, roof and HVAC. We were about 50% complete on the HVAC installation. You're not going to see a lot going on in the next few weeks just because we are waiting for the units to arrive. So we've done everything that we can to this point, and now we just got to wait for the units to get here. And then we have the roof installation that's about 75% complete. And we have substantial completion for that project 922, and for the project here, 825. So knock on wood, we got some wood. Knock on wood, we are on time and on budget for all of these projects. So going smoothly. And that concludes my report.
All right, is there any questions, comments from anybody? Well, I just want to say fabulous job. Getting to this point was very nerve-wracking, and we didn't know what direction we were going to go, what we were going to find. But you and the team, the senior center, everybody here has just done an amazing job. We're so appreciative of what you've done with what you had to work with to get us to this point. So we look forward to the completion, and hopefully we can have a celebratory meeting at the end when it's all said and done. So thank you. All right, next up, Nathan.
So for those of you on the NPRSA board, this is the part of the NPRSA meeting where I usually give a brief update on what's going on at the center. So before I do that, though, I want to recognize Tara Mahmood, who just came in NSC board and also designed S2. So a couple of quick updates because I know we're trying to go fast tonight, but I wanted just to real quickly remind everybody that on August 1st, the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy in King County is up for renewal. And the Senior Center has been working really hard to kind of make sure that it gets some play and it's on everybody's radar and the voters' radar. Thanks to Patricia Gustafson, who's been organizing phone banks here at the Senior Center to get the word out to our members. We've had volunteers show up at city council meetings as they're considering it. Shoreline, Kenmore have both endorsed. Thank you. I think Bothell has it coming up on the 25th to get a presentation on the levy.
Yes.
Lake Forest Park is considering it on Monday. And I know some of the folks in the room have also officially endorsed it on the website. So thank you for your support. The levy does great work across the whole county, doing great things. Over 100,000 seniors served in King County. Here at North Shore, it makes up about 15% of our operating budget. So it's a really important piece of what we do at North Shore Senior Center. So please get the word out, talk to your friends, arm wrestle people, and make sure they get their ballots in. Okay. Just a quick reminder that our annual 5K for the Wranglers Inclusion Program is coming up on August 5th. We have a fantastic MC in Neil, who does that every year to keep it going. So it's a great Saturday morning run if you have time to come out, sign up and enjoy that too. Also, just wanted to mention, in the spirit of bringing things back online at the Senior Center, we're bringing back the Health and Wellness Fair this year. So September 19th is a Tuesday. We'll be doing a big wellness fair here with some healthcare providers, some wellness providers. We're trying to get a vaccination clinic, a flu shot clinic set up, and just a real good chance to bring new people in. And also this year, we're also trying to really incorporate multicultural health and wellness into the programming too. So our partners at Indian American Community Services will also be joining us for that. And then finally, one quick update that's kind of germane to our conversation later. As my board knows, we're still continuing to really hammer in some of the staff recruitment pieces, specifically fitness instructors, a new director of philanthropy, and maintenance supervisor for this building. So please keep talking to folks in your networks about coming on board and joining the NSC team. Any questions for me before we go on to the rest of the agenda?
Nathan, would it help you for these two activities if the city helped amplify and share those, the 5K and the Health and Wellness Fair, or do you need more attention and publicity for that?
Especially yes, that would be great. I think it's
talk later.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, future meetings.
This meeting will be September 20th, 2023 at our regular time, 6:30 p.m.
I guess anything for the good of the order before we go, NPRSA Board? All right, we are, the NPRSA Board is just. All right, I guess we start our joint study session.
So here's a quick overview. We'll go through a little background history timeline. And then we'll present a closing the loop, kind of some questions that have been proposed to us in the past that we kind of just wanted to give information on that we found out. And then we'll discuss the future levy and the needs to be buildings, maintenance options, and then roles and responsibilities. There'll also be a few breakout sessions that you have the questions there. So yeah, it'll be fun and interactive. So next, so this is just our timeline. I don't know, should we go through it all or do we kind of know, we have a gist of kind of where we're at? 1988, our NPRSA was established and the voters approved $3.6 million in bonds to buy the property and the building for the adult day center facility. The senior center was constructed in 1992. In 2001, voters approved a $3.8 million in bonds to buy property and build a second facility. The Health and Wellness Center was then constructed in 2004. In 2006, the pedestrian bridge was constructed between the two buildings. And in 19, the voters approved the current levy that we're in now. So the current levy will end 2025. Just to kind of go over our structures. So we're going to class again.
Swear I only pressed once.
So we have the NPRSA, which is an entity composed of the city of Fothville, city of Kenmore, city of Woodinville, and then King County and Snohomish County. And then we partner with the Northshore Senior Center. And then we have the Northshore Senior Center. So I will let Nathan explain this.
I mean, we talk a lot about how NPRSA is a governmental entity and we're a nonprofit organization. And together we make this really cool public-private partnership. And so because we have these facilities and that structure that the NPRSA is set up, we use that at North Shore to provide transportation services, to do programming across adult day health and inclusion and senior center programming, food banks, and just a whole, and social services, just a whole array of things. So in fact, we're just adding up today, we have about 300 different programs in our portfolio that we operate at North Shore. So, and we couldn't do that without a home.
All right. So any questions about our history, how we got here, or how we're structured?
I just want to say, I don't think anyone in this room looks old enough, but is there anyone who was here, like when the NPRSA was established or when the buildings were built? Probably not, huh?
2006, I was here. 2004, I was a volunteer.
So you've seen a lot of changes and.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's go back that far.
I was gonna say, I didn't think so.
This
but-
is Rod Dombrowski. I visited the senior center for the first time in 1993.
Oh,
I was
my gosh.
driving Gary Locke around the county. He was campaigning for King County executive at the time, and I danced on the dance floor because he wouldn't.
Hey, I'm gonna find that picture. Video or it never happened.
Let's find
You know
that,
what?
please.
It was only flip phones at the time, or maybe even Motorola brick phones. You know, it was like Motorola brick phones, I think.
That's going on our website.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, closing the loop. So there was a question that was proposed to staff about the ability for the NPRSA to gift the buildings to the North Shore Senior Center.
This question has come up a couple other times
Yeah.
before. This was something that came up before the current levy as well.
So per legal counsel, it's found that per RCW, it is not possible to do so. And so there is the language if you're interested, the RSW language. And then another assumption is that the NPRSA agreement with member cities and counties stays generally the same moving forward. So that would include the contributions, which is 16,000 annually combined total. The NPRSA will remain focused on the Northshore Senior Center, and the scope would include the 2 buildings here in Boston.
Yeah, just a quick question. So is that a assumption going forward, or, because I don't remember kind of deciding that, or
Going forward.
Okay.
There was a question at one point about, it wasn't brought up at a meeting, but just sort of peripherally on the radar about whether or not a member agency could withdraw from the NPRSA. It's technically possible, but it has to be approved by voters. It's not something that the city council could just decide themselves to do. So it's sort of like, we're going to assume for the purposes of being able to have a discussion that's focused on this next levy, that things like that are probably not going to happen. That's probably not going to change.
I would love it, not necessarily tonight, but to kind of figure out what it would take to bring under the umbrella the other 2 facilities. I think there's one in Mill Creek, and then of course the one in Kenmore.
And I think that's exactly why we wanted to put those talking points
Yeah.
on there, because we're trying to let you know what staff is hearing or thinking might be the plans. But that's not definitely the plan. So it's good for us to hear that. So if there's more discussion that needs to be had on that, or if we need to study that further.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, if there's interest to exploring that, to see what that would take, that's all.
Take note.
Deborah, this is Rod. Could you repeat what that is? I missed what the issue
Oh,
was.
exploring what it would take to bring the other 2 senior centers in these cities under the NPRSA umbrella. So the Kenmore Senior Center and the other one in Mill Creek. And am I correct that there is not one in Woodinville? Okay,
Not right now.
not right now, yeah.
And so remind me, the Kenmore building, who currently owns that building? The city of Kenmore?
Own the building.
And
But
then
again,
Mill
if we're
Creek.
talking about M&O and, so
Mill Creek
depends on what we're
lease
talking
the building? Or lease space, or?
Mill Creek, we lease space from a private entity.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's worth a little bit of research just so we kind of know what our landscape is. Technically, Kenmore is in the NPRSA boundary and Mill Creek is not. So
Oh,
that,
that's a great point. That's right.
but also deserves a little bit of attention too.
It's possible to adjust boundaries as well. If there's sufficient voter interest in that, could be done.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
Great.
Just quickly, I can clarify, the 16,000 annual combined is just the city's contribution toward the operational budget for
Of the NPRSA.
NPRSA.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The last assumption on this is that a member agency continues as the administrative agency. So Becky, Christine, and I are lawful employees, but we're contracted to work for the NPRSA. We're assuming we'll continue working with that structure rather than the NPRSA hiring us directly or something.
And we've told our board this before, we're really open. I mean, to, if you have better ideas on how the staffing could be done, or if you have a creative idea you've heard about or seen in another organization, like, it doesn't hurt our feelings. I mean, if something works better for the senior center and the residents here in the community, like, by all means, let us know.
We are talking about the NPRSA's administration, right?
Correct.
So there's some history behind the administration of the NPRSA. Where we are today is far better than where we came from. So the structure is working right now currently. So we don't want to break it, but having a conversation is important. So.
All right. So the needs of the buildings. So we definitely know that there is need for preventative and reactive maintenance, and how we move forward in having that taken care of is something that we want you guys to start thinking about, whether it be currently, the NSC is responsible for our preventative and reactive maintenance. And then anything that's deemed a capital asset is the responsibility for replacement or repair on the NPRSA. And then additional repairs that need to be made to the building. We know there are additional capital repairs that need to be made. Me and Nathan have sat down and talked about what that looks like. And also we used our ENG facilities condition report to kind of pull in more information along with our partner Cornerstone, who is our architectural firm that we use. And so capital improvements further, as I don't know if Nathan wants to speak to it, but also looking forward to what these buildings, how these buildings are going to serve the community, how, you know, and the needs, how that looks and changes. So the first breakout, that brings us to our first breakout. So on your breakout session number 1 question, we're going to take about 10 minutes to answer 3 questions. 1, how do you see the demographics we serve changing in the next 10 years? What new needs will these users have? And how can we meet these needs through improvements to the building? So I'm going to start the breakout now. So at about 7:05, we'll come back and then we'll kind of summarize everything. So I'm going to move back to your groups.
I'm gonna unplug everything, so, but you have.
I'm gonna see your groups there.
Yep.
Here we are. Okay.
Good day or a bad day? You could read my writing.
Folks on the computer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so we can stare at little letters.
Yeah, little dots. So we've got
Sarah.
Sarah Arndt from Woodinville, and we've got Rod Dembowski from King County. And also, yeah. Turn your camera
Oh,
on,
good.
board member
I'm here.
Dembowski. There we are.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so first question, how do we see the demographics we serve changing in the next 10 years? Turn the volume up the whole way.
I'll
Well, I
jump in.
think,
Oh, you
go
jump
ahead.
in. Council member. No, you go ahead.
well, I was gonna say that at our last NPRSA meeting, I think Nathan Phillips did a good job of laying out how populations are changing and the older age cohort is growing, and it's also having new interests is almost younger in many ways. Is that a good way to describe it, I guess?
Younger
More
activities.
active.
Younger activities or younger people?
Younger activities. They're not interested in, according to him, they weren't interested in the same types of senior activities that they considered for old people.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if they had traditionally been part of that retirement age community.
Well, I agree with that. Just in talking with all my friends, they are not interested in, really playing bingo, or they're interested in a lot of different things now. But I'm not sure what all the different things are. The wine tasting would be a big plus. That's a very popular one.
Exactly.
But Yeah, I see more older people, but I also see more immigrants maybe coming into this area. I'm not sure, but I think we're gonna have a lot more diversity up here.
So.
I would say that's the direction we're going in.
There is diversity, well, over time, there has been diversity here. North Shore simply hasn't attracted that. And from my experience, I worked at North Shore for 10 years, from 2005 to 2015, and I've been a volunteer as well, so. But we looked at that a lot in terms of the demographics changing and what could we do toward it. But getting the people engaged was a difficulty, partly due to language, okay? And so there were a variety of things we tried to do, but that's in the past, so hopefully we're looking toward the next 10 years. And I think that that will still be the same thing. If you're having immigrants, if you're having whomever with your demographics changing in terms of culture and things like that, not just age. Because there are still people who are older who do want some things like, I mean, computers, okay? I'm computer savvy. But I know people who aren't and they need help. So there's still that type of thing. Even though the younger demographics are fairly computer savvy, there's still a whole group that isn't.
I hear more so than we are.
Hey, what, we sort of touched on this. Are there any new needs that we anticipate emerging as a result of this changing user base? We talked about needs for just more variety of activities. We talked about need for translation options, potentially technology being more available. Anything else that we think we might expect to need?
I wonder if there might be more success pulling in some of those immigrant communities with spaces that are available for them to utilize for holidays. I know that's something that's already available, but making that a bigger feature of the senior center, of inviting those communities in and making it very transparent and easy for them to use that multi-purpose space.
Well, I mean, it's pretty diverse.
Are you talking like renting or are you talking like?
I think we're talking just like programmatically.
Oh, and what about, we might want to diversify what we serve as food here. And adapt to whatever.
I have noticed that the days when Mexican food day or Indian food day, those seem to be very popular. Just from being here all the time. Okay, so of these needs we've identified, what improvements can we make to the buildings that would facilitate that?
The future is not big.
Maybe a lot. Well, areas for translation, I don't know. Just being out in the open, it's kind of hard. I would think, some areas where people can go to get their translation services. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on what you're talking about with translation services. Is it during a class that you get your translation services? Is it, a whole separate thing where you're looking at a document and you need to learn more about it?
I think we need to look into that.
Multilingual instruction potentially for your activities, sort of thing. That's more a staffing need than a
Building.
building need.
Right.
In terms of technology, we have an existing technology center over in health and wellness, but we aren't using it right now. and probably stand to be upgraded, I'm guessing.
Yes, I would suggest that maybe the technology needs to be upgraded and made spread throughout the center a bit more, so it's not just one room where technology can be accessed, but that it can be incorporated into more of the programs that we have.
The other thing that comes immediately to mind is we're talking about being more multicultural. We've said that a lot of that comes down to food. Food is a great expression of culture. We need to do the kitchens over, right, to really facilitate that, both in terms of the number of people we can serve out of the kitchens, in terms of the type of food that we can prepare in the kitchens. I would think if we have more specialized equipment, we can make more specialized dishes.
Well, and maybe we could consider having cooking classes.
You cutting us off, Christine?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
all right. We'll be back.
The brief, so true, kind of summarize what we talked about. And then can you,
Oh, it's gonna get recorded.
oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay, give me a second to get everything plugged back in. Yeah.
So small.
Opportunity.
Okay,
I picked up the program.
I'm choosing Nathan's group.
That's so some of the things we discussed and some of the things I guess we're kind of seeing, just in the space, in the kind of aging space now, I don't know, if it's aging space, but, demographics, you know, they're really kind of diverging into kind of two different ways. A real wide, you know, a group that's, really fit and active and have, and want experiences, you know, beyond what, they see as like senior activities, you know. And then there's also another group that maybe isn't as fit and are kind of more aging, kind of almost right into care. So, but those are two groups that, you know, there's not that much in the middle anymore. And then but we still have to be able to serve, you know, both of those groups, certainly. I mean, certainly with the Health and Wellness Center having, you know, the ability to do those things and serve that, but also just have some more, just kind of upgrading the facilities as far as, you know, being better equipped for that wider array of kind of, I don't know, we call it in this, you know, vitality now, you know, vitality activities, things that are, that don't seem to be the senior activity, you know, that these are just activities, you know, but for an age appropriate, you know. Yeah, for aging people like me, so.
I think Deborah said it great. She says it's for helping folks live their best life.
Yeah.
So that's the group that wants this vitality, you kind of labeled it, which is really giving them the experiences and broadening their lives and really getting excited about life and continuing on. And then there is the group that just kind of falls toward, just like you said, aging into care and needing I call it more of the safety net and other services. I mean, obviously our goal, right, trying to help them live healthy, inspired lives is to get everybody on that upper track. But we still need to be able to cover folks that are. And Arnie's also extra because he works in the senior housing industry, so he sees the demographics changing.
That group want to add?
Oh, sure. So we see it kind of, well, our hope for it is a multi-generational. So, but we see it more as the 70s to the 90s seniors that we currently have, with the incoming of 50 plus, right? So that's kind of what we see, but what we're really hoping for is more of a multi-generational where we can bring in youth with different activities, because that's really life enriching for both parties, the youth as well as the seniors. And we also agree just with you guys as well regarding kind of what we see as the needs is kind of, especially with that younger, the 50 plus generation that would come in, as they're looking for health, nutrition, mental health. Those types of things I think are going to be really huge for the things that we would see as far as needs go. And something that we really talked about was that we could improve on are just things like sports courts, as well as like a playground, maybe doing something with the space right behind the cafeteria, where we could, and maybe forming some sort of like formal program for youth and the elderly, where, you know, like adopt a grandparent or something of that sort, where we can bring in those people. Another thing that, with something that we currently have is the computer lab or the space, maybe bringing in youth that would tutor like the elderly for like different computer programs, as well as like social media and just their electronics, to build those types of relationships. So that's what we mostly talked about. Thank you.
We talked about the changes in our programming that are in line with what you guys have already spoken about. For example, we moved the pool table, which used to be up here on the second floor, moved that downstairs to where you may remember that the gift shop was. And then we turned the old pool room into a really nice yoga studio with a nice floor, mirrors all along one wall and the bar. And that yoga studio is used almost every day of the week now for yoga and Tai Chi and all kinds of other things that I'm not good at pronouncing. And those classes are really well subscribed. We also talked about the kinds of changes in programming, like the liquor license, and that's opening up another kind of socialization time for folks. We've expanded some of the traditional senior center activities, like we expanded bingo. And when the board attended bingo one time as a board team bonding experience, I was amazed at how many different generations were represented there in bingo. And dang, that thing was really fun. I bingo. I think it was with my kids who were like 6 or 8 or something. Anyway, so that's multi-generational. One of the other things that we talked about was that as we reach out to a variety of cultural groups and different ethnic backgrounds, we're becoming really aware that different ethnicities respond to generational issues in different ways. That there are many cultural groups for whom all different generations live in the same house, live in the same neighborhood, get together lots of times, you know, grandparents and parents and children, 3, 4 generations interacting all the time. And that's a direction that we need to go as a senior center if we're going to really respond to our community. And I think that's an eye opener for lots of folks. And another piece that we talked about was the number of grandparents who are raising their grandchildren across all socioeconomic levels. And if we're going to reach those grandparents who may be, 55 years old, 50 years old, up to 70 or 80, caring for their grandchildren, if we want them to participate in our programs, then we need to have something for those kids to do. So whether that's changing the residential space into child appropriate space so that the adult can go do whatever, play pickleball or do art class or whatever, we might need to do those kinds of things. That will help us respond to our changing community. And let's see, did that cover?
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay, well, I guess I'll go ahead and speak to what we talked about. We agree with pretty much what everyone has said here. We talked a lot about the older age cohort wanting new and different activities, not the age appropriate as thought earlier, you know. We also talked about diversity, and we expect the demographics to change with a lot of diversity, both ethnic, cultural, you know, and language. We need to be able to respond with language and have translation available and be able to bring these people in and speak with them. And we agreed with more variety of activities and technology. There's a whole variety of levels of technology with everyone right now. I mean, some are very technology appropriate. They can do everything, and others are like, it's a phone. What do I do with it? So we need to be able to help them learn and help people communicate and help them work on that. And another thing we thought about was food and the kitchens, and update the kitchens and maybe have cooking classes and have, you know, ethnic food and be able to make it. And that would require probably remodeling the kitchens and making them a lot more usable.
Well, there is, at the Health and Wellness Center, there's a cooking area in their small activity room. And that was originally intended to be for such things like cooking classes. And it was used, and it may still be used, I don't know, by the inclusion group for their daily living types of stuff. But so that would, we've often thought that that would be a perfect place for cooking classes. It's just getting staffing, getting people to do it. I mean, we've even had people previously who would volunteer to do the class, but having enough staff time to be able to be there for the evening, or, you know, to make sure it didn't overlap with inclusion groups.
Those are all great. So let's keep this in mind as we talk through the next couple of slides and what does the next levy look like, right? And so this slide is definition of what our levy can be. So a park and recreation district shall have the power to levy excess levy upon the property included within the district in the manner prescribed by Article 7, Section 2, blah, 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 for operating funds, capital outlay funds, and cumulative reserve funds. So this means, next slide, please. I mean, really, we can do anything with this levy, right? So we kind of group them into buckets, so it's easier to kind of digest. So we could do a capital levy is what we're doing now. We're just repairing capital assets on the two buildings. We could do maintenance, which would be the maintenance of our capital assets and or all of the preventative and reactive maintenance for the buildings, or a mixture of either or. And it also allows us to do operational. So programming, if we would want maintenance and programming, we would probably think that it would be a combination of all of those if we were to do an operational maintenance. But that is a very drastic change from what we're doing now. So just from our staff standpoint, before we break out into another session, just to let you know kind of where we're at, we would probably recommend doing a combination of a capital and a maintenance levy. And what that looks like is kind of up to the NPRSA board, but that's where staff is at right now. So for that, sorry, there's a whole nother slide here. Is there another slide? There's not a slide. Is there a slide?
There's not. I moved it. Removed.
Okay, there's another slide, but
Let me see if I can find it. That's that. That's that.
no,
No,
my slide is missing, but it's okay. So
that
I was
slide keeps vanishing.
right? I was gonna talk about so to really define what maintenance would need, right? So we kind of I worked with Cornerstone, who's our architectural consultant. And they gave us some kind of estimated numbers of what maintenance would cost per, like for the roof and for lighting and that's actually on, go down. I didn't kind of want to bombard you, but I don't have this. So this is what I got from Cornerstone. So for preventative maintenance annually, we're looking about $130,000 for these buildings. And then maintenance on the capital, for capital assets only, if the NPRSA agreed that we would take on maintenance for the capital assets that we're replacing and improving on the building, we're probably looking at about, what is it? Yeah, about $70,000. So keep those numbers in mind as we're talking about what that looks like. We're also thinking if there was an option that the NPRSA took on maintenance for preventative and reactive maintenance, that there might be a position that we would need to hire that would work under the NPRSA as NPRSA staff. I'm predicting that this total, that staff member would probably doing about 60 or 70% of this, but we would need like a licensed professionals, probably some contracts to do electrical panel work, HVAC work, things like that. So, yeah.
All that to say, it wouldn't be a full salary on top of
On
that
top of
amount,
this.
right? That would be a little more than that, but not
Yes.
full salary.
Is there a way to put, one of two things, either put this in context of the whole annual budget, or how much would the 129 be, per household? That's funding this.
In terms of our annual budget, right now, we bring in 1.5 million a year. So that would be about 10% of our revenue would go towards preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance.
If we were to do a straight renewal.
If we were to do a straight renewal. In terms of cost per household,
Do we know how many households are in?
yeah, I don't know how many households are in.
What's the mill rate? Do we know what the mill rate is already, or do we have any sense of that?
Sorry, didn't we?
Well, the rate.
Yeah, currently it's 4 cents per $1,000. That's the valuation.
Okay, so it'd be not even another penny. Okay.
So just keep this in mind. This, I wasn't intending, there was a whole nother slide. I didn't want to give you a spreadsheet.
Back up. So I want to make sure, because this is a lot of information, so make sure that everyone is tracking this. So, right now, we're just doing the capital levy. But so I think one of your slides that was missing, we were talking about how, but the actual preventive and reactive maintenance for these two buildings is really important, and it's a heavy lift. And we've already said before, like, we think Nathan and your board do an amazing job of programming and operations, but preventive maintenance is it okay if I say it's challenging, Nathan? Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of.
There's resources.
Yes, yeah.
Prioritize.
There you go. It's,
Preventative, reactive.
yeah.
Well, we do preventative too, but it's a challenge to do. And the North Shore's culture has often relied heavily on volunteer work and like public power to kind of make it happen, which gets you so far, but not to, you can't have volunteers come in and upgrade your control systems on your HVAC system. So there's limitations to our model as well.
As you mentioned, a lot of this work requires licensed professionals.
And so in the last meeting, we were kind of brainstorming, like, okay, are we collectively as a team going to shoot for another levy? It's like, well, if we're going to do that, what actually are your options for that levy? And we really didn't know. And I'm sure some of you that worked on the levy before probably have more institutional knowledge than we do. But we went back to our attorneys and said, okay, like, so you could do a levy where we do it just like we just renew it, we do what we're doing now, or you could wrap up that preventive maintenance and that potential employee, have that potential employee work for the NPRSA. And I think there's some challenges we'd have to work through there that I think, and then, I mean, I don't want to throw this one off the table, but we're asked a lot of times, can we just do a levy that just pumps money into the general fund, basically, of your 501c3? We could legally do that. And I'm really curious to hear if anyone who was around when the last levy was done, if they had that discussion. We don't recommend that for a variety of reasons, but we also didn't want to hide that from you, that that's legally an option, so.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm, given our exercise, that I'm noticing we don't have up here is the, capital improvements. I mean, if we actually want to do something beyond maintenance.
I think yeah, yeah, so I am.
Sorry.
So the capital would include both repairs and new investment. So
very good.
it would be
Okay.
both fixing what still needs to be fixed in the existing capital repairs plan and then any new projects that we identify.
Thank you.
One step back is, does NPRSA and NSC have a very clear definition of which buckets, which things fall in which buckets? Because it can be very confusing, right? I know for a while there was the question about whose is that? Is that ours or them? Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost the platform is, even if it's just listing as many things as you can in each bucket to say, these are the things when it comes time, that way there's not a discussion afterward to say, who's going to pay for this one? It's on the list, this falls into that. And as long as there's consensus with that, at least it makes the administration easier, right?
Yeah, we
That's the goal.
would definitely, when we get to that point, we would need to renew our contract.
So our tenant agreement will be up for renewal at about the same time this levy period ends, which is convenient. And in a current tenant agreement, it's not really clear. It's just sort of like, what is anything that is a capital expense or is considered capital by generally accepted accounting principles. And that doesn't tell you anything, right? So we're hoping that in the next time around, we can have an itemized list like this that breaks down this, and this, if any, are the NPRSA's responsibilities. These are the senior center's responsibilities, and it's really clear.
So the 129 is obviously the total of 74 and 55, but how did you get down to the capital? So which things are you pulling out to your?
These capital assets are the HVAC, they're on the other slide. So it's the roof, the HVAC, the electric, water heater, boiler, and the plumbing. And when we're talking about electrical, it's anything behind the wall. So, or the plumbing, it's anything behind the wall. Those are what I would consider a capital asset. In my experience, the way that the current agreement between the NPRSA and the senior center is set up, I feel like it's doing a disservice to both of our organizations. In my experience working, I worked out for the port with CBP. CBP literally provides a service to that area. And so in that, the port charge CBP $1 for rent and up to $16,000 for preventative maintenance. And then at the end of that, everything else was on the port, just because of the service that the port, the CBP served for the port. I think something like that is, we're not putting all of the maintenance on the senior center. I think that is more in the spirit of what the levy was for, which is to how can the NPRSA support and the voters and residents support the senior center and its programming. And so I think that a combination of the two would better serve both the senior center and also us, because we're also then protecting the money that we're putting into these buildings. And we're making sure we're protecting the investment that the residents are also putting here. So let's break out.
Any other questions on that? That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty heavy.
One question. Think about giving amount of funds to the senior center, and you guys said, but it's not recommended. Can you elaborate?
I think, none of us are experts in ballot measures or the theory behind them. And that's why I'm really interested to hear the folks that worked on the levy before, if they hired a consultant or anything. It just seems like if you're asking the voters to give money, they want some assurances that they're going to know exactly what it's being spent on and that it's a little more defined, like the deliverables are defined. I mean, we're all for supporting programming and operations, but it seems like to me on the ballot measure, if you had something like to fund, general programming or, operations of the senior center, it might be a little too fuzzy for voters. I mean, but I don't know. And so Nathan, I'd rely on your expertise there.
So there's pros and cons to that. I'm not gonna lie. On the levy and it fills our general fund. It's pretty sweet.
Exactly.
Yeah, but on the other hand, that puts our landlord in the position of also being our contractor for the services we're providing, it changes our public-private partnership and shifts. Right now, we're a lot more nimble because we contract with each of the cities actually individually to provide services based on outcomes that city wants. And we're able to update those every 2 years and being really reactive to what's happening in the community. Shifting to a levy model makes the NPRSA our landlord, who's also doing our capital improvements, really also kind of making a 6-year plan for what we're going to do. So there's some drawback. Money's great, but we might be better served by pursuing other lines of funding for the cities as we currently do that are more nimble and address our.
But I also think that, I mean, what people want is programming, right? I mean, it's not very sexy to say, oh, we're gonna maintain these buildings, and that's what you're paying for. So I mean, if there's a way to tie the building piece to the improved programming somehow, I don't know. But I mean, it just, it isn't very much money. So I mean, maybe that's how we got away with it the first time. I don't know. But it is an interesting levy to just have it be maintenance. Yeah, I don't know.
There, your points are really good one too, if I can just, before we break out. In some ways, the levy shifted the senior center from running from a flip phone to running to a brand new iPhone. And so as an organization, we're still kind of learning we need to upgrade our system so we can work with the new capital improvements that have been made here. So does that make sense? We want to we need to grow our operation capacity at the same time we're improving our capital assets so that are in tandem. We don't want to be running a Cadillac maintenance program if we're doing a 1972 Pinto level of programming. So we kind of have to figure out how we're going to grow both at the same time. That makes sense?
Great. All right. So your next breakout. So what types of levies do you see us moving forward with? And I have them listed there. What lessons did we learn from the current levy? And who is the lead on developing levy language and the ballot measure? So that we're kind of tiptoeing into roles and responsibilities here. And none of the NPRSA staff was here. So we're really relying heavily on the senior center to kind of guide us in that way. So let's break out. We have about 15 minutes.
Hey, this is Rod Dembowski. Would it be possible just to stay as one group? We had, just 2 or 3 of us, and I think the collective wisdom would at least be helpful to me.
Okay. You guys good with that? All right. Let's do it.
Saves me having to connect and plug back in.
All right, so I guess let's open the floor to what types of levies do we see us moving forward? Anybody want to kind of speak on that? Anybody have any?
Did I understand that what you had said in terms of what the NPRSA staff recommended was basically the first 3 of those, not the 4th one, the operation?
So, yep, it would be to continue capital repairs and improvements on the building, and then maintenance on capital assets and all preventative and reactive maintenance.
I guess the easiest way to say it is we're pretty open to the first 3. We're not as supportive of that last one, but I wonder if it would be helpful because when I think about the next levy, if it is going to be a capital and preventive maintenance, like what are some of the capital projects that could potentially be in that? I have a slide for that. Okay. Because that kind of helps me think
So, me meeting with Nathan. So me and Nathan have gone over this And then also from our consultant, also from our facilities condition report that we did back in 2019, we pulled out some projects that we think would be good for the next study. So this is, we're looking at the senior center, bathroom upgrades, interior upgrades, kitchen upgrades, the resident conversion to whatever that, you know, would look like for you all, and then some kind of pickleball or sports court. At the Health and Wellness Center, again, bathroom upgrades, interior upgrades, and the kitchen upgrades. And then we really need to focus on ADA compliance because we do have some ADA opportunities here. Parking lot and landscaping, I feel like we could definitely probably do some type of sports court. I feel like there's a lot of space, wasted space in our parking lots currently, so reconfiguring that. And also doing lighting. I added security in there, but so lighting, security, and then energy efficiency projects that could be kind of tied up into that. Elevators, we know that our elevator is kind of on its last leg, so we need to think about that. This is Nathan's next one, pedestrian bridge cover. So that is also on their EV charging stations and then upgraded signage.
That you can see from the road.
Yeah.
If I could elaborate just a little bit, when we say upgrades, it's, I think like bathroom upgrades isn't just kind of freshening up bathroom, it's making it more user friendly, making it less institutional, making it more friendly for caregivers because we know people are going to have more caregiver support. And then also making them more useful for intergenerational program too. They're not kid friendly at all. We have diaper changing stations, for example, in our bathroom.
What about gender neutral bathroom?
And we need gender neutral also. We don't have one in this building, actually. It's a critical.
And we need water efficient toilets.
Yeah, there's a whole slew of green initiatives I think make sense to take on, including solar. We're looking, in 20 years, we probably need to have charging stations for most of the parking lot. There's no reason why we can't do things like water efficient things too. And we need to be thinking about the impacts of climate change and what smoky summers or intense weather means for buildings too. So hidden in that word upgrades are a lot of things that are really important.
Does that also include then things like emergency electrical generators and things like that? So that if we actually were a cooling station, which previously we'd been designated as.
Yes.
We still are.
Yes, we still are.
Then having emergency generators on both buildings would be crucial because also some of the people, need help that way.
Right.
That's
definitely a great question.
And is this a location, and I moved here from Southern California and we're aware of the various buildings where I was involved being places where people in an earthquake or a fire would know that they could go to this particular building, and we had food and we had all kinds of supplies that we maintained so that we could be that emergency response center. And those were churches and those were school buildings and those were community centers. Is Northshore Senior Center one of those here? I've never asked that question. It seems to me that that might be something we have to look at as we go forward.
Pardon? Long ago, we were designated an emergency center, but I don't think we're up to standard now because of the generators. And the other thing would be, we've talked about the river that goes between Bothell and here and how that could get cut off in an earthquake or whatever. So responders, because both sides you got, rivers going through. So a river. And so we would not be taken care of immediately. And we used to talk to the residences around here about that type of thing, because they have emergency generators and such because they have to, because of their clientele. Well, the same would be true for health and wellness. people can't be kept, taken home or any of that, and you're stranded. You know, it's essential, even though it's not necessary.
Well, to me, kind of listening to the conversation, it sounds like there's some programming things that need to be discussed, some opportunities for upgrades, but something else that probably should be on there is, you know, first slide, the first breakout session we talked about is, what does it look like in the future? So, you know, if we're gonna go for a levy, does that capital dollars need to do something, build an additional facility or something? I don't know. There needs to be an assessment, I feel, that will help us to come to the decision on what those needs are going to be now and into the future, so that we can plan properly. And we do that as a city, right? We study, do assessments and things like that. So that might be something that we want to talk about as a group. But as far as the top bullet point, I guess for me, all four of them would be important to know in the discussion. Because it's like it's a menu that we get to pick from, so we can understand. And before we go out to the public, we need to have all the information to say, this is what it's going to take to maintain and operate the facility. What is your level of investment that you as a community want to make? So the more information, the better. If we leave one thing off, somebody's going to ask that question and we don't have the answer. So I'd at least like to know the answer. That would be my take.
As part of either senior service levy or anything else, I mean, do we have a community assessment of what needs and desires are in the community? I mean, it feels like we're kind of walking around blind. I know for our city, when we did a, big bond measure, we did a lot of on the ground work about, what do people want? What are they willing to pay? There's sensitivity analyses. I mean, we're going to be doing, I guess, maybe.
It's a great question. The city of Bothell is going to do a community needs assessment, but more from a human services lens. But we can shape that process as much as possible to give good information to Nathan and his team. But I don't know, it'll be more from like community needs, not like voter appetite or, it's not like a levy assessment. So I don't know how that works, but.
I think so. Historically, we all, each of the cities have done different community surveys from time to time that we learn from. No one's done one kind of for the whole district wide. School district does from time to time. That's useful stuff. Like school district assessments. We tend to lean heavily on the hospital district assessments. They kind of show health data. That's the most forward-looking of all the data sets and needs assessments that are out there. And so we draw from those. I will say, I think doing a little bit of a needs assessment makes sense. And like, we've talked about some really good ideas today, kind of lining those up and looking at how they might fit in a levy probably makes sense. If we did something like put emergency preparedness into the capital side of the levy, that may be one thing we look at programmatically also funding through the levy, because I would have a hard time raising additional capital to support an emergency response program. But if the levy funded that too, that might be an interesting way to combine capital with program.
It also seems like it would be pretty exciting, a little bit more exciting on the, maybe exciting is not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like relevant, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you frame these.
Yeah,
It's on the bathroom upgrade doesn't sound that interesting, but if it's to promote equity and multi-generational, I think it's how you're talking about.
Yeah.
But, and certainly the energy efficiency piece, you could frame that pretty well. People would be pretty interested in that, I think, relative to climate issues. So I think there's some potential here. I mean, the only one that kind of leaps off the page if people would be interested is pickleball courts. But, you can make some of these more lively.
Why did I put you two at the same table?
Well, they're all.
I don't know if this is an appropriate place to bring this up. You mentioned parking lots and inquired about the parking lots. I volunteer as a receptionist at the front desk, at least half a day per week and often more than that. And there's just a a frequent concern about not having enough parking. That's been exacerbated by the construction, with all the construction trailers around. But even before the construction trailers were here, as we were gearing back up again post-pandemic, we were finding parking lot pressure. And now the parking lot pressure is really intense. And even as recently as Monday, there were people coming in asking, what is going on here? I had to park way up at the other end of the parking lot, and I just can't walk that far. Or people coming in for some program and saying, God, I had to park way up at the other end, and I drove around like a vulture trying to find a parking space. And, they were spry and healthy, and, they could have walked half a mile to get here, but nevertheless, they had a very hard time. And I know that when we gear up in the fall and more of the programs are running, and people are back in town, I don't know how we're gonna deal with the parking, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a real issue.
Christine could ultimately provide more information on this. There's a lot of unused space or underutilized, I'll say, space in the parking lot. There's a lot of really big medians that if those were shrunk, if the spaces were put in more efficiently, easily increase capacity.
That's why parking lot is up there.
Yeah.
Redo the parking lots.
We'll need to do an assessment to make sure that those islands weren't meant for something like storm or some kind of, but that would be what I would want to do, is increase the number of spaces here.
So philosophically, do most folks think it's okay to think about shifting the maintenance responsibilities to the NPRSA? I mean, is there anyone who's opposed to that, I guess?
I have some concerns about shifting it all over to NPRSA.
Okay.
I don't know how to divide it. But having been in both kinds of positions in various organizations, I'd want to be really careful about how that's done and make sure that when those maintenance issues come up, that those who are not here living with them on a daily basis really take them seriously. Because my experience is it can be easy for it to get dropped.
I think that's a great point, because I think y'all have already talked about that a lot. Like, so does that person actually, in essence, work here on site? I mean, they kind of have to.
That's the intention.
So, yeah.
There has to be.
So it's, but
I think
The question is more, is the maintenance person the RSA employee or NSC?
Exactly, and that's one that I think needs to be parsed.
or and I don't know, I'm sorry to be talking so much. I don't even really know what I'm doing, but is there a way to allocate more funds to the senior center where they pay for, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot, we don't decide that tonight, but just we think about how the levy ballot language would be written. It's important for us to know what y'all are.
I've worked in public organizations where I've managed properties that have been like full maintenance. I did everything from maintenance to janitorial to everything on the property. And then some were, we just maintained capital assets. The one thing that makes a difference is just the process, right? To make sure that we have a process put together where we know me and Nathan would work together to put together a process where if there was a maintenance person on site, there would need to be a process for putting in a work order, assigning duties. I mean, I have managed maintenance staff, so I have experience in that. I come from the port before here, so I had maintenance carpenters, electricians, plumbers, stormwater, everything. And then we also had 120 tenants compared to our one tenant in over 30 buildings, one being a 5-story commercial building, so office space. So I definitely know how to do it. It's just putting those processes in place and making sure there are clear expectations on both sides. So it's not difficult. It's just taking the time to make sure everything is right. So I don't see it as being a big haul or something that would be really, really hard to do.
You're saying now, it's like, you lose a little bit of control.
Yeah, yeah,
Some control and priorities set.
yeah.
Yes,
How
exactly.
much do the priorities overlap?
Well, I'm here. I'm here and I work very closely with Nathan and I would be on site. Yeah. I would be on site. So it's definitely, you know, and I think being here, the last couple of months, you know, working and enjoying, you know, the programming and seeing everything in action has been good, you know, for us and to see how much our work impacts, you know, the community. It's good.
To identify where there's still needs.
Yes, definitely.
Since the lease is up for renewal, that could be another place where we could utilize to kind of make more clear of what those expectations are, especially definitely senior center side on what would get done. So that would be also another thing. And we could also obviously amend it in the future too.
Great. All right, next, can we move? So we're all good with exploring maintenance, capital, assets, all of the above. We'll go ahead and just, okay. Do we want to move to the next question real quick? What lessons? So there wasn't a lot of us here when this levy was.
Who was here?
I think if Rod is still on the phone, I think Rod has a
Okay,
pretty big background. Just real quickly, what I would say is the lesson learned was when the levy went out, it was for specific things, right? You could only do certain things with this levy. So that was, for me, that was a huge learning lesson, having gone through that process, that you can only use the funds for this stuff. So, but Rod was very instrumental in helping to push it through. So I'll let him kind of speak to it.
Yeah, thanks, James. I'm following the discussion closely. And sorry, I just don't have my computer and my phone's a little, not the greatest camera, but a fundamental principle for me I want to share with this group is fidelity to what we told the voters. It's really important to me that is that's just foundational. And when I first came onto the county council, I would come to the NPRSA meetings and we were struggling. We had money to pay the bond, but really no other money. And the agreement was for the operator of the center to really take care of the maintenance, except for this kind of, I'll call it ill-defined capital. In the private sector, before I came to the council, I was a real estate lawyer. You'd have something called a triple net lease, where the owner might maintain the roof and maybe the building envelope, but the tenant would take care of everything else. That's fairly standard out there. This is unique language negotiated. It's a little different. That might be a model we look at depending on where folks want to be. But in developing the current levy, which was really born out of desperation as the building began to fall apart, and we felt we had a duty to the taxpayers that owned it to take care of this asset. We went out and said, we did an assessment, what's needed to be done. We costed that. And then we put a price on that and said, well, what would that cost? What would that scope of work cost? Rob Carlinzi, the city manager for Kenmore, really pushed us to give us a little cushion and boost it by a penny or so, or maybe 2 pennies. I think some of us were like at 3 cents. I think we kicked it to 5 cents per thousand. And that was a good thing. He was very smart to give that advice, and we did it because obviously the costs have gone up. I think for me, like, it's important to circle back with our tax-paying voters and say, you gave us this money. It was a 5-year deal to do a specific scope of work. Here's how we did. And we've come close, but we've learned, there's a few more things I don't think that we're going to get to, but I think that work still needs to be done. That's a little more background, I think. And James, you were there, of course, for all of it too. You could correct me if I got anything wrong. But I just think it will be important to close this current levy out, achieving as much as we can of what we promised the voters we would do, and then just be very candid, saying, hey, here's what else needs to be done to the asset you own. We should decide, does it make sense for us to take on, as the NPRSA, more of the maintenance? There's an argument for that. I think we should also keep in mind, I'm speaking as a county council member now, that we have the Veterans, Seniors and Human Services levy. Seniors have been added to that. Taxpayers are probably going to renew that. They pay into that, and that funds a lot of operations in the county, and there will never be enough money. So on the question before about the scope of, well, I think we need to have a real discussion about whether we should have a renewed levy. Before we do that, we need to really give a report card on how we've done with the current levy. And be just straightforward and candid with folks. And if there are new needs that make sense, to go with those. But I would, my personal view is I'd be careful about getting into the program operations. And as wonderful as the work is, I think the county has funding there. There's other funding sources there. So our situation is somewhat unique. You know, in other parts of the county, the cities own the senior centers. They take care of the senior centers. They operate the senior centers. So this is a unique thing that we'll figure out together. Lessons learned. Make sure we have a cushion, because things always seem to cost more and take longer. I mean, we couldn't have predicted the pandemic and very high inflation, but that was a lesson, maybe the number one takeaway lesson here. And that when you're dealing with buildings, there's often surprises, particularly one that's starting to age. You know, we have these siding and water intrusion issues. There's, roof challenges, things like that. There's just, you don't have 100% visibility when you're dealing with construction. I know I'm talking about stuff you know more about, James, from your profession. So I would say build in a little more room. Another lesson is the cost to administer this. I think we had no professional staff. We were just barely getting along. We weren't complying, I don't think, with public records laws and other things like that.
No, you are.
So, but now we are, but that costs a lot of money. I mean, the cost, Bothel's been wonderful in the support staff, but we did not anticipate the administrative cost for implementing this program. And that, I think, if we're going to do a renewal, if you will, other levy, we should be realistic about what that costs and look at all options. I mean, would it make sense to hire Nathan's shop to handle some of that? Should we continue with Bothell? How do you go out direct employees? We should reflect on how this has worked and whether what's been the pluses and minuses on it. So there you go. I've talked too much, but there's some history, context, and thoughts.
Anybody else have anything they would like to add?
Personally, I agree, because I was here, I was participating in the NPRSA at that point, but Nora was also on the board at the time. Last levy this year went forward, and one of the reports of the board was, hey, if you guys need to spend a lot of money or cut bait, right? Because based on our experiences, you're not going to get this thing passed in the short 4 months or whatever it was, get this thing through. And it was just a testament, I think, to the membership and to the community all joining together and getting the word out. I think it passed by a tremendous margin. And I agree with Rod in terms of, just in terms of having some responsibility toward getting that passed. There is a report card, right? So I think, if we had a few other board members at the time that were very involved, which is why I think Nora and I weren't as much, but they were very involved. They went to all the board meetings, and they, I think, spoke up, and they maybe rattled their swords a little bit more, saying like, oh, I can't believe that bridge cost so much money. It took a tremendous amount more and all these things. I think, at least from my perspective, that's all water under the bridge. It's, things change, inflation happened, like you say, things behind the walls happen. But I do think there is an aspect so my wife and I counter each other's vote all the time. More taxes? She's like, no. I'm always like, you got to look at what it's for, right? And who, do you support that? So, but that would be one thing on her side for me to even better. It's like, hey, this is how, it was originally budgeted. This is how we've, done according to that. And I think, Rod makes a good point, is really reporting out, being fiduciary in terms of putting that out there, and then establishing the justification for why we want to proceed and continue providing services, but, reach the community and deliver what the mission is really.
It sounds kind of like what I'm hearing is we should almost do a report card out front, get the message out there and have that message behind that, what the needs would be to continue. So reporting the good work that happened, being fiscally responsible for the taxpayers' dollars and their asset. And then here's what we want to do into the future. Okay.
And I think largely so, I think, again, those folks that were prior board members were like, the challenge we have right now is people that aren't here every day, what did the levy pay for, right? Because we don't really see a lot with the envelope, the roof, the HVAC maybe, but the, you know, the rest of the folks that supported us, they want to make sure that we, you know, have either this is what it was, but this is what, you know, the next one's not, this is more maintenance. This is more, maybe it's a redesign of things, it's the programming we're going to hopefully put behind it. This is why we're doing that. It's not become, it doesn't become more of a maintenance, more of a renovation to the future, right? That's the story you want to tell. Is we're stepping into the future and preparing more than we are still trying to catch up with fixing everything that's been breaking on us. That's my suggestion.
And keep the information in front of the community. Repetition. There was doorbelling. There were a lot of feet on the ground with that last levy. And there was a lot of information out there. We had tables, we manned tables. And, you know, early on, you need to get the information out because voters vote early around here.
Yes.
They don't wait. And so by halfway towards the end, they'd wave at any of us at the table and go, oh yeah, I already voted. Oh, okay. That was a good thing.
And just before we close out, so it's, the levy's over the end of 2025, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Little time, but not a time. It'd be great to have like a time frame, a timeline, excuse me, of what do we need to do for November of 25, right? And I do think, I mean, it would be great to get a summary of all the input from the various surveys and determine whether we need to do more needs assessment. That seems early step. So I'm hoping we can get that on them fairly soon, because I mean, this is all great, but in order to encapsulate those few things that we're going to go to the voters for, if we go to the voters, we need to know what the highest priorities are, because that will help us articulate what these priorities are.
Nitty gritty question for putting a new levy in a good light with the voters. Will we get the envelope done before this levy gets in people's faces?
Yes.
Will we have it painted so that they can drive past and say, oh, yeah, I voted for that money and it did make a difference? Because right now you don't see, and all the things that were done were absolutely essential, but they're invisible.
So my plan. My plan, as long as nothing reactive comes up that we have to repair majorly.
Yes.
My plan would be to do this envelope, repaint the Health and Wellness Center to match the Senior Center's new envelope, and then put new handrails on the bridge to make it nice. Put a pretty package together, out forward facing. Yeah, that would be the plan for next year. But there are some logistic things that our NPRSA board needs to do budget wise. We need to talk about that. But yeah, that kind of is my vision for rounding out this levy.
By Q3?
Yes.
Mhm.
Construction.
Well, if that's done next year, we probably do need to think about the timing so that it's close enough to the election.
Mhm.
So, and then I think too, is like with my city administrator hat on, I really think what other city levies might be expiring at the same time. Because if there are lots of things stacked on that voter's ballot, we probably need to think about that. I know we have one pretty big levy that's expiring in 2025. There's also some other things.
Or I think just thinking of putting one in 2025, that's a big one.
I think we need to be strategic about that, but.
Evergreen has one coming up too.
Just want to say that you guys are absolutely wonderfully to be thinking about this just far in advance. That's all. Yeah, it is. But recognizing that is great. It's great to see.
Takes a village, takes a village.
Hey, this is Rod. Could I have one more lesson and then an idea?
One more list I forgot to give is, I think, James, you mentioned it was overwhelmingly approved. The lesson from that was people love the North Shore Senior Center, love it so much that they voted for a new tax, which is almost at the 80% level. And I'll just tell you the passage rate was completely unexpected and very affirming. And so I think that's a lesson that's on the kind of foresight to keep in mind.
Can I add something after he said that? If we can also invite people to come to the community center and see, I think that will move a lot of minds because they'll get to see the situation on the ground. And then when they see the ideas, they can relate.
Yes. Yeah. Great idea.
Do an open house. And I would say if we could find money either for a community-wide newsletter to a report card, or at the city of Bothell or Kenmore's communications with their constituents to do a report card. Hey, you remember this tax? You voted for it. Here's how the money was spent. Just close the loop.
Some big display boards that have the before and after photos, and we pick the worst before photos we can find. Such a
Got one more bullet?
One more. So leading, who is going to take the lead on developing love language and ballot measure? Like we were thinking consultants or.
We're struggling with this a little bit because our legal office, we're still waiting for a full evaluation from them, but we have some limitations as paid staff on what we can actually do. So we would love to do a lot, but we really have to be careful. So we just want to start thinking about that now, like who's doing what the roles are. And
If you have any money for a consultant, I mean, there's a few things that they could do. This is one of them, but again, framing. And really evaluating what are the needs and how do you put what we know we need to get done into a language that people will vote for.
There's a lot that we can do from the senior center side and also can secure pro bono support for things too. If the NPRSA is investing in this, one thing the NPRSA is allowed to do is put together the marketing and packaging around a report card. And I think that's the piece that I would ask NPRSA to kind of focus on.
Oh, for sure.
We can help on we can do the political end. We can even help draft levy language if that's useful But the one thing where I think if we had a little bit to invest, if NPRSA could, just like King County does the report card for the vets levy and for the mid levy, the staff can do the report card.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us to kind of take that and convert that into political.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rod, do you recall who did the majority of the language last time?
Can you say again?
Do you recall who did the majority of the language for the last levy?
Oh, I think we had Kenan help us. I think we had Kenan help us. And I helped write with the ballot statement with one of your senior center folks from Kenmore. I'm embarrassed to forget her name right now.
Okay.
Suzanne Greathouse.
Yes, Suzanne, exactly. She took the lead. I added some edits. He fixed my edits and out it went. But the ballot language was, I think we worked with Kenan Williams of Inslee Best at the time. Now he's with Foster Garvey.
Remember, we have to draft a ballot, we have to draft language for both counties. So just.
Yeah. And one other thought, the dollars you're saying there in the 100,000 for the maintenance, it has to be, the needs have to be big enough to do a levy because the administrative cost just to, buy a spot on the ballot is very expensive, a few $100,000 if I recall. So like I would just say we've got to have a capital program that warrants going to the voters with a levy.
Yeah.
We couldn't source from other spots.
All right, so as we're closing it, anybody have any last words or anything? I do want to kind of make a recommendation. I think that this session that we're having now is very valuable. And I was wanting to know, this is the first time we've ever done a joint session, if we want to continue to do this at least annually. to meet together, the two boards.
I think it's a good idea so that we're all aligned.
Mhm.
We have some interests.
Right.
Say much more frequently than annually. Like quarterly. Yeah.
I think it's really good because then you guys can hear what our side and we can, I think it merges and makes the partnership stronger.
Awesome. Well, I'll work with Nathan and we can get some more joint meetings
I
together.
would say also from I think our perspective, because, coming out of the pandemic and everything, we're still kind of stabilizing to grow our programs, right? Try to get back to a cash reserve situation, which we had with pre-pandemic, and then we kind of used it through different services and other things we provided through it. So I say this to Nathan all the time, because unfortunately a nonprofit doesn't have a way to build cash reserves. And so we are essentially living a little bit on, day to day, the last audit said we had 1.2 months of working capital. I mean, that's a little rough, for folks who are, on the finisher side. So not that I'm looking for the funding or anything else, but I think it's important. And I think as we get out of the state, I think we'll do fine. Yeah, I think we're on the upswing, we're getting back in the community, we're getting more memberships are going up. So we'll get there, but I think as we start to envision how we want to change our programs and other things, there's opportunity as well. You're all in the community as well. NPRSA is another representation. So some of the visioning and the strategic planning that we have done in a couple of years now would be helpful to maybe, because it is really, right? Even though your facilities, the idea of what we're getting and where we want to go as an organization is important. So I think even sometimes we may be able to get a piece of the agenda also to talk more about where we're going as opposed to just what our joint thing is. So it kind of leads the discussion as to what the facilities need in terms of supporting the program. It's like that.
Right, we good?
I think we're good.
All right, we ready for the test? All right, it was great to see everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Amazing work what you guys do here at the Senior Center. And thank you enough on behalf of the entire team. The partnership is well received from the heart of all of us. So thank you for everybody for your hard work.
Thank you also.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You as well.
After the weekend, yeah. Thanks for coming in.